Fantastic. How can I assist you, sir?
Well, geez, let me try to summarize this. There's kind of two parts here that I'm getting hung up on. The first part is just the requirements. I've been working with the insurance guy, and I think we're ready to go there. Except now that I've seen more and more like umbrella policy requirements. Is that common, or should I disregard that, or what?
Uh, it depends on how bad you want the job. I mean, that's just a function of money.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, in your experience, is that a common occurrence, is worthwhile to get, or is it something that just I've seen a couple times and won't see that often?
So that's really a hard question to answer, right? Because look, when you're making plenty of money and then all of a sudden you see a requirement, it's like the state of West Virginia. For years and years and years, we avoided work in West Virginia because somehow they were able to convince the federal government that on all federal contracts you had to have a state contractor's license in order to to be awarded a federal contract. And so eventually Doug just went, you know what? I'm just going to go get my contractor's license in West Virginia. And so, that cost money, right? And so, when we saw requirements that required money, we just invested the money to go solve the requirements, whatever the requirement was. And so the question becomes, if an umbrella policy is a requirement on a federal contract and you really want the job, then ergo get the umbrella policy, and what's the big deal? Um, if the financial aspects of an umbrella policy are something that's burdensome right now, well, then just go bid jobs that don't require an umbrella policy. And then when you get a federal contract and you start making some money, then start looking other places I saw recently somebody contacted me and said that on some contracts in Washington state, they're now requiring a contractor's license in Washington state. It's the same thing. So now it's 48 states that you don't need a contractor's license. And then all of a sudden, and it's not every job in Washington right now. It's this one particular office, as best as I can tell.
Yeah, that may have been me, or I was one of those people, because that's something I sent you a few weeks ago. Um, but anyway, so then basically what I'm hearing is that if if a solicitation specifies a certain requirement, and you really want it, go do it. Otherwise, move on, because there's other ones to go after. So it's not a one size fits all.
It's never a one size fits all because you got to consider it also from my perspective, right? I've done it both ways. I've done federal contracts with a company that was doing 20 to 40 million dollars a year, right? With my dad over the years, that was the base of my understanding. I mean, when I was a kid, they were doing, 90 million dollars a year, and that was the 1980s money. And so, financial problems associated with federal contracts just got solved. But then also in 2005, I started my own company when my brother's accident happened. And so I was very money conscious. For one thing, I was watching my dad spend $200,000 a month, and I was going, holy shit, that's a lot of money. But on the other hand, it's my brother and he needed it. And
Hmm.
and so uh I was penny pinching back then. I don't remember specifically. I don't remember whether I had an umbrella policy or not. Well, the only thing I can tell you, the only insurance story that I have was that probably 3 years. So first of all, I think I say this in the workshop, but this was true as it happened in real life. When you leave Reitmeyer and Associates and you've been working for your dad your whole life and you need to go get insurance for your new company, what insurance company do you go to?
Your dad's.
No shit, right? And so they charged me $800 a month for insurance. And I was like, well, fuck, that's just what it costs. I didn't even go look anywhere else. When you're looking to get bonding, what bonding guy do you go to?
Yeah, your dad's guy.
No shit. Hey, Scott, I'm starting a new thing. I need some bonding. And so About 3 years into that, I'm in my garage doing something, and some door to door guy, and he was young, like 25, 23, something like that, walks up to me and says, "Hey, are you interested in home insurance?" And I was like, I looked at him, and my first thought, and I think I actually said, "Fuck off." And as he's turning around and walking away, I went, I had just paid the $800 premium like the day before per month, right? And it was on
Hmm.
my mind. I was like, "Hey, do you offer construction insurance?" And he turned around, and I ran inside and I grabbed a piece of paper out of the one of the latest solicitations I was looking at that showed the insurance requirements. And I said, "Hey, take this. Here's my phone number. Call me if you can get me insurance that meets these requirements." Couple of days later, he calls me and he goes, "Yeah, I can do that for 2,300 a year." And I blew a fucking gasket. Called my insurance company and just started screaming at them. "Why are you charging me fuck you?" And then I wrote that kid a check for, I don't know, 2,400 bucks or something like that, and had that uh until GC Experts started.
Hmm.
Um so it pays to look around, although things are a little bit different today because the internet's kind of leveled the playing field on these things. But anyway, you know these things happen.
So umbrellas are not that common, is what I'm hearing.
I tell people that in general, when you read the insurance requirements of a contract, it says GNL 1-2, which is the most
Hmm.
standard type of insurance, and it's been that way for as long as I can remember. If all of a
Right.
sudden some solicitation comes up that says you need to have an umbrella policy, well, then get the umbrella policy. I mean, in terms of dollars, somebody starting out, I could see that that would be prohibitively expensive. But
Right.
when you start making money in this thing, I mean, like Rick Crawford, just finished a job. He got it for 48,750 bucks, and his costs were 7 grand. He did the job in 2 days. And if you call him up and you go, "Hey, all of a sudden you need an umbrella policy," he's gonna go, "Fuck yeah," and write the check. So,
Right.
at some point when you get a federal contract and you start making some money in this thing, these kinds of things are just going to be cost of doing business.
Right. So that kind of segues me into my next thing that I'm really struggling with is, I guess, how, it's almost like I'm going into this without knowing anything, because that's how it kind of feels, to be honest. So, like, starting from scratch, square one, how do I h- how do I get my first contract? And are there types of solicitations I should be looking for over others? I mean, I've been focusing on RFQs primarily,
Okay,
even though,
I
sorry.
whenever this conversation comes up, I have some two basic questions. Number one is, how many jobs have you bid? And number two is, what were the results? So answer that question. Answer the first question first. How many jobs have you bid?
I have only been like 4 jobs so far, so I'm not
Okay.
expecting. I'm not coming at this and being like, "Oh, why haven't I got a contract yet?" That's not. I know why I haven't got a contract yet. I
Okay.
guess I'm. So
So
I've
I,
focused on what areas of work I do understand, which
yep,
is roofing.
let me finish this. Let me
Okay.
finish, because I've done this a long time and I've run every scenario that can possibly be thrown at me in this type of phone call. I've heard. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you my favorite example. First of all, let me just first state that GC Experts clients is a bell curve. I've been on this for 14 years, talked to every different size, standard, set aside, every type of contractor going into this that you can think of. And I've learned that it's a bell curve. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that is, if you look at one side on the in the low numbers, uh 4 or 5 or even 6 of my clients over time have won the first job that they ever bid.
Hmm.
Most of the people, as that bell curve goes up to numbers of people, get their first federal contract within the first 90 days. But on the other side of the bell curve, that's way more interesting to me, is the 5 or 6 guys that call me up after some amount of time and say what you said, I haven't gotten my first federal contract. And you obviously know why, but here's what I tell them. Because the answer is always the same as you gave me. I go, how many jobs have you bid? Well, I bid 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. It's some small number.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the homework that I gave Lamart. And I'll give this homework to you. Whether you do it or not is entirely up to you. But this is what I told him. I said, your job for the next 60 days is to turn in a bid 3 times a week where you have no fucking idea what the work is and you have no fucking idea how much it's going to cost. And just guesstimate it, fill the paperwork out as best as you can, and turn them in.
Okay. That I can do and will do. I guess my question to that is, I feel like I'm not filling out the paperwork correctly, or that they're requiring, a whole list of things to be submitted with the bid that I can't provide.
Then you do it the best you can, because ultimately it's their job to determine 2 things. Number one, is your bid responsive? Did you answer the questions they asked? Okay. Number 2 is they have to determine the price. Okay. And price is going to trump a lot of things a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And let me give you a secret that nobody tells anybody. And frankly, I don't even tell my clients this. When people send me a bid and they say, "Hey, Sean, review this before I turn it in, make sure it's responsive." I do that just to kind of keep in touch with my clients, that we're having conversations. This is an opportunity for them to engage and we can have a short conversation. And also, in most cases, after you've watched my videos at the membership site, you've learned
Yeah.
all you can about filling out a bid. There's not much more that I can add than what I've already put in those videos. But guess what? Suppose I look at your bid and I miss something. You forgot to sign it and I miss it. Okay? When you turn your bid in, guess what the government does? They call you up and they go, "Hey man, you forgot to sign your bid." There's nothing that I can add to your bid that the government, in most cases, will pick up the phone and call you and go, "Hey, you forgot to attach a technical proposal. And we asked for a technical proposal." Minor
Okay.
little things that you're going to miss. The government, but why would they do that? The answer is they want as many responsive bids as they can get. It's good for the taxpayer.
Okay. Maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way then.
Well, that's why we have these kinds of conversations, Josh. I mean, this is what this is for.
My thoughts were like, oh, I forgot this or that, and they're just gonna throw it in the trash and wouldn't even, do that. Which is, fine if that's how they do it, that's fine. But, I just don't want to be wasting my time for hours and hours doing a bid when it's just gonna get thrown away because I forgot something.
Look, how about do this for the next 60 days? Turn in 3 bids a week that only take you 15 minutes to fill out the paperwork. If it's going to take you more than 15 minutes to fill out the paperwork, fucking throw it away and move on to the next one.
Okay.
I
So
mean, there's lots of different ways to go out at this, and I'm just telling you, when I have these conversations with guys and they really take this to heart, Lamart took it to heart. He's like, I'm going to bid 3 jobs a week, just like Sean. He actually just sits down and he does everything I tell him to do. It's fucking phenomenal. But he got 3 awards. One of them was improper. In other words, they awarded it to him without calling him and confirming his bid.
mhm.
And then I told him, I said, look, just go figure out if it's a winner or a loser, and then proceed accordingly. He figured out it was a loser, and then he called the government, and then every email. It's so funny. His thread on Telegram with me, it's like every time they send him an email, he's so confused, doesn't know, he's nervous. He forwards it, to me on Telegram, and then how should I respond? And then he was worried because they had improperly awarded him a contract that was a clear loser, and I said, look, tell him this. And then he said, okay, now he said this. Look, tell him this, and every outcome came out exactly as I told him it would come out, which you would expect, right? You would never expect that Sean would tell you something that's going to happen and then, the opposite happen, right?
Yeah. Well, what about I don't think I found a single solicitation that didn't require X amount of past references, experience, with
That's
contract,
right.
all this
So
information.
in those, you just contact a local subcontractor that can perform the work, and you ask him if you can get a price. If he doesn't give you a price, or balks at working for the federal government or something, you just say, look, if you had to do this and you were calling around trying, who would you call after you? Because you're the 5-star review, somebody else suggested that you were the guy to talk to, and so if you're not the guy, who should I be calling? And then if you still can't make any headway, in fact, I just had this conversation with another guy. Let me read you what I told him. And by the way, I'm recording this and I'll give you a copy of this call. Let's see.
Yeah, I guess I was interpreting RFQs as being kind of like just sending quick numbers and not having to spend hours putting together bids and making all these calls. I guess I was interpreting that more like how you said, where you send out bids and then you do your work after you get a call. That's
Yes.
kind of how I wanted to do it too.
Yes. But
So
if you're having the problem of experience, you got to understand also that when I was doing this, I had already been doing it a long time. So I had a lot of, if you read FAR 15.305, it says key personnel, and then it says, or relevant subcontractors who will be for, okay. Well, I'm the key personnel, and so I had a whole lot of experience. So I didn't really have that hurdle. But there were jobs that we went after that we didn't have any experience doing. And in those cases, we submitted our intended subcontractor, and then we used the words from the FAR. So here's what I wrote him. Well, here's the question. Hey Sean, out of the 7 bids I was working on, I'm only able to get 2 estimates from the several subcontractors for each bid. Why is it that they don't want to give estimates? This is strange that most don't want to give estimates for federal jobs. I said, ask them, quote, if they had to get the job done, who should we be talking to? In the workshop, we give several examples more than just Googling subcontractors in the area. Have you tried all the others, such as calling the mayor's office, calling the local churches, and ask them who they would suggest, calling subs that do similar work and asking who they would suggest for this other type of work? So there's roundabout ways to get at getting prices. If it's a roofing job and you can't find a roofer there to talk to you, call an insulator and say, who's your favorite roofer besides these guys?
mhm. So that's a lot of work that you're doing before you submit the bid.
In cases where I need what's the word, for heaven's sake,
References or past
reference,
performance.
yeah, past performance that I don't qualify for it. I'm finding a relevant subcontractor in a. Have you read FAR 15305?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you're
So like
looking to accomplish.
Right. I mean, I understand, like, a lot of this I feel like is very conceptual. Like, I understand the concept of it. It's the application of it that I'm struggling with. And,
Have you
you know,
watched my video where I cold called that roofing guy to get a price?
I don't think so.
Let me give you let me give you a link to it. Hold on just a second.
Yeah, I can't find a lot of the videos that are mentioned.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for. Wish I had it in a quicker place.
So, how would like just a, I guess, a general capabilities statement or resume, if you will, like being submitted, would that suffice for these things, or do you have to just literally every single one, find an intended sub and get their numbers and like, I mean, it's just a lot of upfront work.
Okay. First of all, there's ways around that if you want to get around that.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard of onlinejobs.ph? Here,
No.
I'll put the link in here. Onlinejobs.ph. You can hire people on that website for $4 an hour. And you can send them the links to a SAM job that you're interested in and tell them, I want you buy them. You'll have to buy them a US Skype phone number. Okay.
Hmm.
And they can sit and make calls to potential subcontractors all day long. They'll work in US hours.
Do they speak English?
In fact, people in the Philippines nationally, for a sense of pride, if you look into the history of the people in the Philippines and what the United States has done for that country, it's a sense of pride that 98% of the population is fluent in English.
Wow. Yeah, those types of things make me nervous because they don't usually speak, you know, good English.
When you put your ad on there for somebody to respond to it, tell them to send you an example of their audio. Okay, where they'll sit and talk in front of the computer and you can judge the quality of their English. You can even say in your advertisement, I want somebody who speaks with no accent.
Okay. Well, that's certainly a way to, you know, get around that.
Eh, Look, that's look, I'm the guy that gives you all the options. And so there's lots of different ways to accomplish tasks.
Yeah. So, like, I guess again though, is just a capability statement. We've done these types of jobs. You know, would that suffice for a lot of these or no?
Absolutely.
So, when I'm filling out the bid and it says, provide past performance references, and I would just say see attached capabilities
Well, not only
statement.
can you say see attached capability statement, but you can put your capability statement behind the technical proposal.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking for a way to kind of streamline, like I know bid trackers to really narrow down the time it takes to find jobs and to bid them and all that. But I find that I'm still spending multiple hours on a solicitation, putting a bid together.
Look,
And I,
then your homework today is to spend 1 hour, not even an hour. I can't imagine somebody would spend an hour on bid tracker. Spend 20 minutes on bid tracker, download some jobs. And then your homework is to go through the files that get downloaded and find a
mhm,
job that will only take 15 minutes or less to fill the paperwork out. Okay? And then once you find that job that takes 15 minutes, start filling it out. And if you get to 15 minutes in filling out the paperwork, call me and I'll show you how you could have done that in 15 minutes, not more than 15 minutes.
okay. Well, there's a few that I found. I mean, I was starting again. I more comfortable with roofing because that's what I know. So I look for roofs. I found like a garage roof that should be, in my mind, a very easy thing to submit a bid for. But I'm going through, I'm not even kidding, there's hundreds and hundreds of pages of just shit. And I'm like, well, I don't really have time to read all of this. And, and then it's, I just want to submit a bid.
The
And then
bid
I
should
see,
be just the two-page document at the top, the 1442 or the SF 18 or 1449. I mean,
so I can submit these, I can just fill those papers out, submit those, sign them, send a capability statement and a letter or whatever, and then move on.
yes.
Because all these other things that they require to be submitted as responsive is
Like
all
what? All these other, like what specifically?
like they literally have attachments of like fill out, get these references, and then have someone else fill it out, and then name the numbers and contacts
If
and
it
job.
says see references, handwrite on there attached in technical proposal.
Okay, because that's I guess what I'm looking for is if that's a way I can do this efficiently, is like, yeah, I can understand the general scope of work, put a number together, send a technical proposal, a letter, a capability statement, send it, move on.
That's it.
That, to me, that's the only way this happens quickly. Otherwise, I'm spending hours and hours making all these phone calls, and it's all this
Do
like,
it the way I just told you to for the next week or 10 days, and then let's have this conversation again and let's see what happens. I guarantee you what's going to happen is that a contracting officer is going to call you and say, hey, you forgot to check this check mark here. Okay, check the check mark, send it in. That's a 5-minute conversation and solve. Okay.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I like you mentioned in the workshop, you send your bids and do your work after you get a call from the contracting officer, and that's like how I wanted to go about this too. Is why put all the work in if there's no need to? I'll put
Josh,
it the work in after.
I'm just telling you, it works. I don't know what else to tell you.
Okay. Well, if that works, and it's not going to be considered unresponsive, then that's what I'm going to do.
If you turn in your bid and it's unresponsive, I'm telling you there's a 90% chance. Okay. And the only reason I'm not saying 100 is because I can't control people within the federal government doing their jobs. But there's a 90% chance somebody's going to call you and say, hey, you forgot to check this check mark, or hey, you forgot to sign this, or hey, there was an amendment on the job. Did you acknowledge the amendment? 90% chance somebody's going to call you, contact you, email you, somehow contact you that your bid is non-responsive.
Okay. So most of the time they'll call you to let you know.
I 100% guarantee that something on the somewhere near 90%.
Okay. So, well, that's pretty high percent. So, all right. Yeah, because I had checked out the results of the few bids that I did send, and like some, I mean, I was reasonably close to several of them, but there was one in particular that I bid like 89,000 and it got awarded for like 12,000, and I was just like, that's crazy. Like, you can have it for 12,000.
Well, yeah, and I talk about that in the workshop. Remember, I talk about
Yeah,
that guy that had the I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like landscaping or a water sprinkler system or something.
yeah, I remember the story. That's what I thought of when
Yeah,
when I saw that result. It's like, yeah, have fun with that. Good luck.
yeah. I wanted to prepare everybody for that because the first time I saw it in real life when I was doing my own bidding and everything, there were some times that I was like, fuck, no way.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to use a real world example because I don't remember specifically who that guy was, but he was adamant, man.
Well, that's what I don't. I mean, my mind was like, I wasn't mad about it. I was like, hey, dude, knock yourself out.
Yeah,
If you want it, yeah, like all the power to you.
yep,
I don't even think the material would have cost 12,000, to be honest. So hey,
yeah.
whatever. anyway, yeah. So I can do that, and that's if I miss something and you say I'll get a call most of the time, then I'll just do it that way.
Go for it.
All right. Well, that helps me then, because otherwise I'm looking through these documents, and they're just page after page of just, it might as well be Chinese, and I'm like, I got to know all this just to submit a bid. It's crazy. Who has time for this? So
Nobody does.
yeah, it's insane. Like, so it's, it's good to know. I'll put a capability statement. I'll
I mean,
write a letter.
think about it this way. This is I started doing this probably 15 years ago. When you go in to buy a car, when you finish, when you go in to actually do the paperwork to buy a car, they put something like 15, 20 documents in front of you, and they say, sign here, initial here, sign here, initial here, blah, 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 blah. You're agreeing to all this shit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. 15 years ago, I looked up at the guy and he was telling me, read all this and sign here, read all this and sign here. And I looked at him, I said, if I don't sign this, do I get to walk out of here with the car? And he said, no. And I said, then what the fuck difference does it make what all this says? Sign, sign,
Right.
sign, 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 sign. Because I want the car. It's the same thing with federal contracting. They got all that shit in there. You're agreeing to it whether you agree with it or not if you want the contract. The government
Right.
sets the terms.
Right. Well, that's a good way of explaining that, because I can't think of a single guy that has the time to read all that and understand it, and I'm not going through 400 pages of shit, just to submit a bid.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you.
All right, Josh, have a good one.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.